Spoiler alert for Mandalorian Season 3, Episodes 1 through 8. If you haven't watched it, click off, go watch it, and then come back. Spoiler alert for Mandalorian Season 3. This is your warning. If you haven't watched it, I do recommend going and watching it. It's actually pretty good. With that out of the way, I guess let's start with that. So spoiler alert, Season 3, go watch it. If you haven't, I do recommend it. So, let's start with Episode 1. I wrote down all my thoughts, by the way, which is why I'm doing this. So, Episode 1, the recap I'm going to give is going to be after a recap of stuff we learned or after a huge recap of stuff we learned in Book of Boba Fett. The episode actually gets into a little bit of good, seeing the space whales, or Purrgil, from Rebels. It was a nice way of introducing them into live action, along with reintroducing them to the audience, especially if you haven't watched Star Wars Rebels and don't know about the space whales. Then the episode gets really good with the stuff on Navarro. The stuff on Navarro, they bring back IG-11, was always a good way to start. You know, seeing IG-11 was a good way to start, even though I think that the episode all in all wasn't really all that good, but seeing that they haven't forgotten about our favorite droid, IG, it was really nice. But the fact that we don't see him come back until, like, episode 11 kind of sucks. Especially because it's, like, he's such a fundamental part of, like, Season 1. He was a big reason why I think the show took off the way it did. And the dialogue, and when we get to the end of the episode, it seems a bit dull the way Bo-Katan refused to help Din Djarin out. It felt like Din had more emotion in his voice than Bo-Katan did with the dialogue at times, and it was just meh. All in all, 7.5 out of 10. Not the best start, and the 2.5 knock is mainly for the boring recap to start and a kind of dull end, and some dialogue just being way off. Episode 2, The Mines of Mandalore. Anyway, Episode 2 starts off really strong. Thank you. Starts off really strong, going back to Tatooine before going to Mandalore. It was really great to see R5 come in and joining Din. It was really great to see. Once we were on Mandalore, it gets super fun learning. Oh, I shouldn't have ran from that. Learning that the planet isn't poisoned and seeing life forms survive is a really cool setup for something later. When Bo-Katan joins and asks, like, Grogu, did you think your dad was the only Mandalorian? It does an amazing job at foreshadowing something we won't see pay off until much later. This episode also does an amazing job at giving us the theme of the season, which was identity. Din fights with whether or not he's a Mandalorian because he took off his helmet, and a father because he's training Grogu. Or, you know, because he has Grogu in his midst. Which is why, and that's part of the reason why he can't wield the Darksaber, like, at all. Bo-Katan sarcastically reads a plaque up to Din about the planet's history and says that it was all for show for her. You know, that goes back to her being... Fuck, what are these moves? That goes back to her identity not really... She doesn't really care about the Mandalorian way as much as everyone else seems to think. But she does later she is conflicted with her identity when she sees for the first time in Star Wars history the great and mighty Mythosaur. This theme will eventually extend over to Grogu, but that is a later episode. In my opinion, this is the best episode, but I had to give it a 9 out of 10, because the only thing that really knocked it to me was just how easy, like, Din got his ass beat. Especially after, like, 2 seasons where he's been this, like, really cool, really good fighter. And it just seems like he was just never... He seemed, like, too weak. The first few episodes, he just seemed really weak. Episode 3, The Convert. Episode 3 is pretty strong. The start of the episode with the dogfight between Din and Bo-Katan and the TIE Fighters is something we don't get to see too often in Star Wars in general anymore. Like, we barely get to see TIE Fighter, or we barely get to see, like, fighting in space anymore. But, It's, yeah, that's something we don't get to see too often. And then when we get into the Dr. Pershing side of the story, I really liked how it goes back to the main theme of identity in the episode. Because, you know, at first he's content with his new identity with the New Republic. But when someone tempts him, he starts noticing flaws in the New Republic, and he grows discontent with his new identity. He wants to continue his cloning research that he had been doing for the past 2 seasons. But can't because of the New Republic. He's reverting back to an older identity in these episodes, in this episode, whilst also trying to embrace this new identity of trying to do good. When we get back to Din and Bo-Katan, her identity is called into question again, as the armor says that by creed she is also allowed to join in the covert. Bo-Katan says that she does not walk the way, but the armor says that she is still allowed in. Everyone kind of rejoices, and the episode is left with her looking at the Mythosaur skull made of Beskar on the wall. This was an 8 out of 10. The only thing that really dragged this one down for me was the seemingly random jump to the Dr. Pershing storyline. And then the fact that they kind of killed him off towards the end of the episode. I really didn't like that. He's such a cool character. I want to see him back. I wanted to see him kind of finally be able to do good in the series rather than not. Episode 4. This was the midpoint of the season. So it starts off, so it had to be really good. Whoops. Where am I? The midpoint, it starts off really good with Grogu actually getting some character development instead of being the MacGuffin of the series. Oh, I should have read off the episode names, my bad. Or, did I? No, I've read them off. Yeah. Episode 4, The Foundling, sorry. You know, Grogu finally gets to be a part of the story, which I hated Season 2 when they made the focus be on Grogu, and then, oh, Grogu got stolen. Just when you thought he was going to get character development in the last season, they just threw that all away. You know, instead of being the MacGuffin that needs constant protection, the Jedi that saved him, Kelleran Beck, being played by the same person who did Jar Jar back in the prequels, was a really nice redemption of the actor, and a surprise I don't think many fans were really expecting to see out of the series. I mean, I wasn't expecting to see the actor for Jar Jar Binks come back. I kind of thought that he'd want to stay as far the frig away from Star Wars as he could get, but I guess not. It made it a little bit more surprising than what I thought who was gonna save him, which was gonna be some like BS way of bringing back Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson's character. Again, with the theme of identity and this episode having a focus on Grogu and Bo-Katan's identity, Bo-Katan leads the hunting party, which is set out to go find Paz Vizsla's kid because he gets stolen by some bird-like creature, I should mention. You know, Bo-Katan leads this hunting party where finding where she belongs in Din's with Din's people, and making a new identity for herself is great. She wants to help no matter what, and she's found people who will accept it and accept her no matter the past, and if she has the Darksaber or not. I gave this episode a 9 out of 10. I thought that the only thing that really dragged it down was how fast it seemingly went by. You know, at first you think it's like going kind of slow, but then it like really speeds up and you're like, wow, I just watched a 40-minute episode, and I watched a 40-minute episode. Not something you expect. And like, yeah, that was kind of the only thing in my opinion that drags it down. Episode 5, The Pirate. Episode 5, The Pirate. The episode starts off really good by bringing back the pirate plot we saw in episode 1. Along with giving us our first look at live-action Zeb, who are from Star Wars Rebels, our second Rebels reference this season, When we get back to the Mandalorian and Carson Teva, that's the X-Wing pilot that constantly stops him. It's kind of become a running gag. When we get back to the Mandalorian and Carson Teva, I thought that it showed how much not even the New Republic's people could trust them to do everything. And when we're just with the Mandalorians discussing whether or not to help Greef Karga, that's the person that runs Navarro now, and the people of Navarro, that theme of identity comes back when Paz says, "Because we are Mandalorians." You know, basically saying that the whole Mandalorian race is a race of fighters, that's what they are there to do. That's why they are there, is to fight. To fight the battles that no one else does. The whole fight between the pirates and the Mandalorians was really cool and done extremely well. Normally when we get these like big fights with different factions and stuff like that, especially in movies, everything just seems a little bit off and no one really knows what they're doing in these fights. Whereas with this, it was tactical, it was strategic, showing how strong the Mandalorians really are when they come together rather than fight each other. The end with the reveal that Moff Gideon never made it to trial was really good, since it sets up a nice in-universe explanation as to why he returned rather than leaving it to the audience. How did he escape? Why did he escape? And stuff like that. So it was really nice. 10 out of 10. This episode was great. The action and the writing and even the structure of the episode was really good and solid. The best of this season. It didn't feel too rushed. It felt really nice to watch, because I feel like a lot of the problems with this season was episodes were either too fast or too slow. This was really good pacing. Episode 6. This is my dreaded one. Whilst the beginning of the episode is not very strong and the overall episode's not very strong, it does have its moments. When we see the Ugnaughts, which is the same species as Kuiil from Season 1, if you want to know, I can actually pull up a picture of Kuiil. This is Kuiil. He's an Ugnaught. With that out of the way, let's get back to the actual thing. You know, the same species as Kuiil. And part of Din's identity comes out again, which is that we don't see very often, which is his more diplomatic and respected side. He starts by saying that he knew Kuiil, and immediately they stopped work and noticed Din and Bo-Katan. Din follows this up by This is then followed by Bo-Katan implying that they haven't heard the news about the droids malfunctioning. And the Ugnaughts' response is that they hear everything. They are practically a lifeblood of the city. Din follows this up by complimenting, saying that they're the hardest working species in the Star Wars universe, which is a nice way of showing just how formal he really is. And when we get towards the end of the episode, and when Din compliments him, that's how they get that information. When we get to the end of the episode, Commissioner Hellgate's speech, it's done by Christopher Lloyd, the same guy that does Back to the Future, the same Back to the Future guy. So it's like the way he talks about like Count Dooku, it made me feel like he probably at one point watched like the prequels and agreed with what Count Dooku said in them and was like, yeah, that he has like, because he says it with so much passion. Count Dooku was a visionary. Yeah, I really like that Christopher Lloyd cameo. I thought it was much better than the Jack Black one. But I'm going to give this episode a 7 out of 10. It's the weakest this season. The beginning was not really needed and only served to introduce the more Mandalorians that Din and Bo-Katan must find. The mystery of the episode is good, not the best, just good. But again, only really served as a means to block Din and Bo-Katan from reaching the Mandalorians without going through a whole episode. And the Elder Wand bullshit at the end as to why they were going to give Bo-Katan the Darksaber back. Because if you don't know, the Darksaber has to be won via combat. It's one of the only lightsabers in Star Wars canon that must be won via combat. So it was just really lame. Episode 7, The Spies. The beginning of the episode was awesome. With the introduction of this Shadow Council, which is like a bunch of like old Imperial warlords, I guess would be the right way of describing them, come together. And something I don't think a lot of people expected out of this season. Ah, dang it. It's something I don't think a lot of people expected to see. Mainly because, again, we get a Grand Admiral Thrawn reference, which is our third Rebels reference this season. The reintroduction of IG-11, now IG-12, was good. Was a good way to get Grogu more involved with the story. Again, I feel like Grogu usually doesn't get involved in these stories at all, and basically gets the short end of the stick every time. So it was really nice to see that. When Grogu stops the fight between Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves, it really shows how Grogu doesn't like all the fighting between the Mandalorians and how he kind of sees them as his own people. And how he truly cares about the Mandalorian people. The talk with Din and Bo-Katan was also really done well. Really well done and well executed. And, you know, the thing about it was, like, it shows how not all Mandalorians really actually care about the Darksaber and are more in it for... and are more in this because... or would follow you more if you were just honest, loyal, and have honor. Paz Vizsla's death was really sad to see. I mean, it's really the only thing that I think was really sad this whole season. And, you know, a character that finally trusted Din and Bo-Katan dies a hero's death and fights to the bitter end. This was a 9 out of 10 episode. Whilst everything was, like, really good and well done, the one problem I have was that it seems like everything happens too fast. You know, that seems to be the main thing that just keeps coming back. It's just too fast. And finally, episode 8, The Return. Now, this is before I do my big, like, season recap. With the episode starts off where we left off in episode 7. The tension's high, everything's going on, and we're left hoping that the Mandalorian people can escape, and that Din will be all right. The idea of identity is brought back up again, with Moff Gideon wanting to create these perfect clones by using parts of each culture we've seen. Clones from cloning, the Beskar armor and fighting from the Mandalorians, and the Force from the Jedi. He wants these to be a part of his identity. Even going as far as to saying something on the lines of, like, giving to me what I wasn't given all those years ago, or something on those lines. I can't remember exactly what he said. The fight sequences were really amazing, and some of the best done this season, especially with the Praetorian Guard, which is the Red Guard. You can look them up. Actually, I can just pull them up. These guys are the Praetorian Guard. Getting to the end of the episode, it was really nice to see that theme of identity get wrapped up with Din adopting Grogu and becoming a father, which is something that he's fought with himself on for, like, all 3 seasons. You know, back in season 1, he does save the child a second time, but only because he really cares about what they're going to do to him. And even goes as far as to say, I can't raise this thing back all the way then. And it keeps going into season 2, and now in season 3, he's finally become that father we all wanted him to be. Grogu able to use the Force more than he could previously because he's no longer fighting his inner self as he sees it, as he is now both Jedi and Mandalorian. Something that has walked both ways and has been reuniting the Mandalorians. As the episode ends with this Iris out edit of Din and Grogu, now father and son. It feels like all those loose ends are now tied up. 9 out of 10. The only thing I really didn't like was how Din got his ass beat again, or handed to him so easily after 2 seasons. Not bad, just those little bits of just him getting his ass beat is just annoying so much. All in all, I'm going to give this season 7.5 to 8 out of 10. It's in that range. I don't know exactly where, but it's in there. The reason is mostly because of episodes 1 and 6 feeling redundant and at times useless. The overall feel of the season was really good. I liked how they didn't try to do this episodic structure that they tried with season 2, where it's like, oh, we've got a storyline, but here's an episode in between. And instead focused on one continuous storyline, unlike season 2, which tried to do what I just said. And it just felt all over the place. I'm going to get into my more controversial opinion, which is that I liked the destruction of the Darksaber. The Darksaber being destroyed is good in my opinion, and let's just get back to the story being about Din and Grogu and less about what's happening with the Darksaber. I feel like the Darksaber is used so much with Mandalorians and has become a writing crutch whenever we have them. It was nice when it was first introduced, but went downhill from there with Darth Maul getting his hands on it. And then it reappeared in Rebels, and then now in the Mandalorian. They got rid of the Darksaber before they relied too much on it, like what happened in the prequel trilogy and sequels, where like lightsabers became this like big part of it, and they were so focused on it that it just seemed like, why are you doing this? Like there's so much more you could do. And that was always the problem, in my opinion, with both the prequels and the sequels. They relied on a lightsaber to do action they relied on a lightsaber instead of trying to write a full story at times, which just felt like really redundant, which made like some of the lightsaber fights cool, but the story overall just really bad. The final thing I'm going to say about this is that I liked how Grogu finally got to be a part of the season rather than a plot device that Din has to protect and then get back when he is taken. Holy moly, 2 seasons of just Grogu being this like, let's get him back, or we need to take him here, you know, and we don't get any development of Grogu's character. And now I feel like we've finally gotten redeemed because of that. I mean, that's all I really have to say. You know, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Until next time.